a lot of Spider-Man games over the years, but I like to think of four main eras which began way back in the year 2000. The first being the two Spider-Man games for the PlayStation 1 and other various consoles. Spider-Man in 2000 and Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro in 2001. These two pretty much set the stage for all future games in the series, or at least from what I've seen of them, because I don't own any console that these were available on. The second is the Treyarch era, which started with Spider-Man the movie game in 2002 and ended with Spider-Man Web of Shadows in 2008. This is the longest and my favourite era. Most of the games that really got the feeling of being Spider-Man are here. Most of them. But I'll get to that review later. The third is the Beenox era, starting with Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions in 2010 and ending with The Amazing Spider-Man 2 in 2014. The first two games, Shattered Dimensions and Edge of Time, had original stories written for them and have some of the best visuals and voice acting out of all of these games, though the only one that I haven't played is Edge of Time. The last two games, The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, were the most forced movie tie-ins out of them all and had more of the problems that affected the other games, though to the first game's credit it did try to be different to other movie tie-in games. I'll get more into those two in the future. The fourth and current era is the Insomniac era that at the moment only has one game released, Marvel's Spider-Man for the PlayStation 4. This is considered to be the best Spider-Man game of all time. You can definitely see why, even if it's not my favourite. When I get to that review, you'll know why. And I'm able to call this an era because of the Miles Morales spin-off that was announced not too long ago. I'd talk about more, but it's time that I start talking about the 19-year-old game that everyone likes to overshadow with its much more beloved sequel, Spider-Man, the movie game. The Xbox Classics Edition. Before I get into the story and levels, I should let you know that there's an optional tutorial in the main menu. Trust me when I say you're going to need it. The main reason I mention the tutorial is because it's narrated by the legendary Bruce Campbell. All I can add is the fact that he returns for the sequels. I've got nothing else to say about that.
Hey, the topic at hand is web swinging. But let's get one thing straight first. Do not, I repeat, do not try this at home. Your house isn't nearly tall enough. Got it? Okay. Now that the public service message is out of the way, press the right trigger button to start web swinging.
Anyway, let's get into the story, which starts off with you having to track down Uncle Ben's killer throughout the first three levels as the human spider. I guess now is the time to mention how web swinging and combat work. For web swinging, you press the right trigger to shoot out your web, and if you hold it you can swing much faster but have less control when trying to move left or right, and press the A button to let go. It controls fine, it's not the absolute best web swinging mechanic, but it gets the job done for the most part. Though the animation of Spider-Man while swinging is definitely a little odd, and the fact that he's able to swing over buildings with his webs up in the clouds is a nitpick that I won't get into. Combat is pretty simple. X is for punches, B is for kicks, and Y is for webbing up enemies. You can also pull some of these attacks off in the air for a bit, and when you're on the ground you can pull off combos that you can collect in the levels. The only problem with this is that you have to go to the combo list in the pause menu every time. This can get very tedious really fast, unless you just memorize your favourite combo and keep repeating it non-stop on the harder enemies, in which case never mind, it's fine. Just one more thing to add, why does Spider-Man have limited webbing in this game when in the movie he had organic webbing, which basically equals to unlimited webbing? If he had web shooters I'd give it a pass, but sorry, it just doesn't make any sense. Where was I? Oh yeah, the story. Eventually you corner Uncle Ben's killer in a room that looks like it was designed for a boss battle. Believe it or not, this guy here is one of the hardest boss battles in the game. I guess looks can be deceiving. So you defeat your uncle's killer and before you can bring him to justice, he slips into the nearest window, killing himself. Yeah, removing that pipe really does make the way he dies much more comedic than intended, huh? Anyway, your journey into becoming a hero is complete and now you're Spider-Man, taking pictures of yourself fighting a balloon in the sky. Alright then. You're about to go hand in the photos when suddenly you're ambushed by flying Oscorp robots. If you don't remember this happening in the movie, I can't blame you. Next is the Shocker levels, which have you chasing Shocker and his goons through Grand Central Station and then the subway tunnels. Not really much to talk about here except for the boss battle. You start off by having to avoid blasts from Shocker whilst trying to catch up to him. He blocks off your path, you find a different one, then you proceed to beat the crap out of him. It's a pretty decent fight. He'll try to blast his shockwaves at you a lot of the time, so you'll just need to jump past them. Occasionally he'll make himself into a mini tornado. Once he's done, he'll be stunned for a few seconds and you can just keep shooting him with your webs or through random objects that are scattered throughout the room. Shocker gives up where his partner, Vulture's lair, is located, showing how much of a scumbag he really is. Moving on to the Vulture levels that start off with you having to reach the top of Vulture's tower whilst avoiding all of his traps. Definitely one of the more challenging levels here. You reach to the top of the tower, Vulture flies away, and a chase begins. He'll occasionally try to slow you down, but he just simply waits for you to pick up your pace for a little while. At least he's a nice supervillain. You catch up to him, pull off some air attacks until he Hit him a couple of times, he takes off into the sky, repeat this a few times, and he's down. Even though this is more of a setup for a boss later on, it's still a really good and somewhat challenging fight. Now on to the Scorpion levels that begin with Scorpion running away from these robot spiders that were sent by Oscorp to capture him, leading to a car park with Peter nearby, who's just kinda there to take some pictures of something. So you change into your outfit and help Scorpion out. This is a really annoying level, mostly because Scorpion's health bar can drop rapidly if you're not watching where he and the spiders are. Seriously, the damage these guys can deal to him in such a small amount of time is insane. And yeah, if he dies, it's game over for you. So you destroy all of the spiders, and whilst the two of you are escaping, Scorpion thinks you were also sent by Oscorp to capture him. I mean, can you really blame him? You end up in Grand Central Station, again, and you fight. He'll blast you with his tail a lot of the time, so it's best to just go in close and use your best ground combos on him. Though he does have some ranged attacks with his tail, so you'll definitely need to look for health that's scattered throughout the station. You beat him, and when Spider-Man isn't looking, he clearly sprints out of the station very loudly behind his back, and Spidey's like,
disappeared.
You're supposed to be one of the smartest heroes in Marvel, come on! And yeah, the Scorpion subplot is never mentioned again here, which is a shame because this is the most interesting storyline in the game. But oh well, we'll see how the Spider-Man 3 game continues his story, right? The game finally goes back to adapting the plot of the movie by showing Norman Osborn's transformation into the Green Goblin. Your first task is to save Mary Jane. She needed rescuing like 3 times in the movie. I'm honestly surprised I didn't have to save her earlier on. You save her, and in return she gives you a little kiss on the mask while a giant panda balloon in the background plummets down to the citizens below.
Thanks again.
No problem. Grab hold of a rogue balloon anytime. Rescuing damsels is my specialty.
Our hero, ladies and gentlemen. I get that you've had a crush on her since childhood, but seriously, man? Anyway, now's the first out of 3 boss battles with the Goblin. For this first one, it's pretty simple. You chase him, use your web and air attacks. He flies away and causes damage that you have to quickly repair. You fix the damage and continue to chase him. Once you deal enough damage, you'll fly off into the next level arena and you pursue. Not much else to add here except for the fact that Willem Dafoe is clearly having fun playing the Green Goblin just as much as in the movie. I say that and then listen to who I'm playing as. Yeah, Tobey Maguire doesn't seem to be interested at all in these games. He just sounds bored a lot of the time, which is just sad because Spider-Man has more quips and funny lines in these games than all 3 films in the trilogy. Clearly, he only cared for that little paycheck. The second boss battle is where things get more interesting. Remember earlier when I said the Vulture's boss was more of a setup for one later on in the game? Well, here it is. You start off by fighting him in the sky while he's on his glider. He'll attack with built-in machine guns and pumpkin bombs. You can even jump onto the glider and fight him for a short period of time, though I was never able to get the timing right. Once you take away his blue health bar, he jumps off and lands inside of a close building. Now he has a completely different moveset with some of his glider abilities. He still has his pumpkin bombs and will occasionally throw some at you, but really he just likes to fight you head on. Most of his attacks will instantly start a series of combos that deal a lot of damage, so look out for some close health because you're really gonna need it. The best thing to do here is either use your absolute best combo the whole time, or shoot him with web balls repeatedly that'll take up all of your web bar. Yeah, just look for nearby ammo for that one. After a little while, he'll jump out of the building and back onto his glider. You do enough damage, he drops onto another building, and same thing here. He offers to be Spider-Man's pal, but he's a loner, so that won't work at all. In response, Goblin reveals that he's planted bombs all over downtown that are set to go off in a few minutes. Overreacting much? This bomb level is a pain in the arse. You've got all these spotlights, flying robots, and lasers! Just avoid the spotlights and web ball the robots, and then deactivate the closest bombs. Also, don't rush some of these more chaotic levels, especially the indoor ones, because the camera will be nearly impossible to control. Just don't even attempt it. I'll get more into the camera later. The only good to come from this is that it was one of the first out of many bomb levels in Spider-Man games. Looking forward to those! After that's over, Goblin says this.
Alright, Spider-Man. You've made your choice.
And decides to hire Kraven the Hunter to kill him. Okay then. He lures Spider-Man to the zoo and poisons him. You have to go through the zoo whilst avoiding all of Kraven's traps and making sure you have enough health because of the poison that's slowly killing you. At points Kraven will show up and try to snipe you from the trees. You have to hide behind some cover because if you get hit even once, you'll lose a crap ton of health. After you've escaped all those traps, it's time to fight Kraven. Go up close and just unleash everything on him until he drinks one of his potions that make him invincible for a short while. Once his potion wears off, do what I said before and avoid that big massive hole of snakes in the ground. You get the antidote from Kraven, and he keeps the part about Osborn hiring him to himself because he did it for the thrill of the hunt, as he pretty much puts it. It's a shame that these two levels were exclusively on the Xbox version because this marks Kraven's first appearance in a 3D Spider-Man game. And he's also one of his best villains. I'll never know why these were Xbox exclusive levels. I guess Spider-Man did it before Arkham Knight did with those Scarecrow Nightmare missions. So because this is the Xbox version, you're just automatically going after the Goblin again. Even though you just defeated Kraven, who didn't mention anything about Osborn or Goblin. Spider-Man must mean business. Goblin sends his toys after you. You have to destroy 50 of them until Spider-Man realizes that he's a little outnumbered and hides until Goblin gets bored and leaves. Swing around, look for web ammo and health, use web and air attacks, then when you've destroyed enough Razor Bats, swing away and hide. Spider-Man finds a piece of a Razor Bat and goes home to study it, unlike in the movie where he just waits until the next time Goblin shows up somewhere. So in the game based off of the movie, Spider-Man tries harder to find ways to stop the main villain than in the movie. I don't know if that's cool or sad. Peter notices that the Razor Bat has the Oscorp logo on it, so he decides to break into Oscorp to find out the Goblin's motives. Speaking of the Goblin...
Spider-Man. Spider-Man?
Well, well, well. What a tangled web we weave.
Norman just has the Goblin suit in his office? I know your identity in the movie was obvious and all, but you're not even trying to conceal it at this point. And now it's time for the Oscorp levels, the most annoying and difficult levels in the game. For the first one, you gotta find all of the pieces of a code that you need to open a special door. They're on computers that are in 2 rooms with guards and spotlights. If you're spotted by a guard, he'll shout out,
Sound the alarm!
If he reaches it, these super soldier robots will show up and blast with everything. You have to hide somewhere quickly, otherwise you're basically dead. You must use stealth in this and the next level. If you attempt to rush it and try to get those pieces of the code, you'll get interrupted by the robots and die. Best to take your time here. After you retrieve the whole code and open the door with a quick minigame, you're on to the second level. Spider-Man runs into a doctor that isn't crazy, who reveals that Oscorp are developing chemical weapons. Then go into the central chamber to start the injection process. Oh, and you have to do it in the order the doctor tells you to. Yeah, you're gonna feel the pressure throughout the level, plus with the advanced security in a couple of rooms. Definitely the worst out of the Oscorp levels. Spider-Man ends up running into the wrong room and is trapped with Oscorp's ultimate weapon. A giant mecha-sized robot that would give Godzilla an annoying day. This was before the Amazing Spider-Man game overdid it. Also, does anybody remember this happening in the movie? No? Okay, never mind, forget I asked. You gotta destroy these shield generators before you can damage the machine. All of the flying robot enemies are here unloading everything at you, so it's best to hide up here and shoot web balls at the generators. Once all of the generators are destroyed, you can jump onto the head of the machine, simply punch and kick it a few times and you're done. I'd say that was the most chaotic level, but then I realised the next and final Oscorp level existed. Spider-Man enters Norman's office and finds out the Goblin is going to capture Mary Jane, which we already knew at the start of these levels, or if you've seen the movie. All of those super soldier robots are here and stealth is instantly out the window. You gotta deactivate the security measures and then get out of there. Also, don't bother fighting the robots, you'll just lose a bunch of health and die, and die, and die. Goblin captures Mary Jane with Spider-Man not far behind. You chase them for a little bit until you get to the bridge for your final battle with the Goblin. First you save Mary Jane, again, then face off with Goblin. Same thing as before, except you can defeat him before he even lands on the ground, and his glider can do damage when they're separated. After this epic final battle, Spider-Man learns some shocking news.
Mr. Osborn. Why?
They both had the exact same voice, Peter, it's not that surprising. Norman gets impaled by his glider and says tell Harry he's sorry, even though we only saw him in one cutscene earlier on. He dies and Spider-Man and Mary Jane kiss without moving his mask at all in front of Norman's corpse. Pretty weird way to end your game, but alright. And credits. There's quite a lot of extra content here. You got a menu to enter cheats, like playing as other characters, and unlimited webbing, which I used. There's concept art for this and the movie, all of the CG cutscenes that look really off now, and bowling! I'll let Bruce sum it up for you.
Okay, come on. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Spider-Man? Bowling, right?
You can go back and replay all of the levels. One of the training options has you in the wrestling ring from the movie. And once you've taken down enough enemies, you can fight Bonesaw, who's looking more luchador than macho. The soundtrack is great. Talking about it won't do it justice, so just have a listen to it. There's kind of a new game plus here, except instead of playing as Spider-Man, you're playing as the Green Goblin, who has a completely different playstyle to him. He has his glider, pumpkin bombs, razor bats, and super speed. I think the developers got mixed up with that one villain from DC. The best part about playing as the Goblin is that he's actually Harry Osborn and it takes place after Norman's death. Oh, and he's voiced by Josh Keaton. Wait, what? Yeah, turns out Josh was originally going to play Spider-Man in this game in case Toby wasn't available, so they just ended up reusing Toby's lines as Spider-Man for Josh as Green Goblin. For those of you who don't know, Josh would later on end up voicing Spider-Man in the... Yeah, this is single-handedly one of the weirdest crossovers to witness right now.
Hey, Vulture, didn't your mother ever teach you that stealing is wrong?
You got alternate costumes like Peter Parker, the Human Spider, already mentioned Green Goblin, an unused suit for the movie that was designed by comic book artist Alex Ross. He later did the artwork that was in the opening credits of Spider-Man 2. If you wear this suit and play one of the Goblin boss battles, he'll have his unused suit from the movie as well. Pretty cool? Well, that's about it. Spider-Man the movie game is a pretty decent start for Treyarch's set of Spider-Man games. It's not the absolute best, but I think it's a good starting point in this long series of games and shouldn't be as overlooked as it is. Thanks for watching and tune in next time as I review Spider-Man 2, the movie game. See you guys.